is one that you're much more likely to notice. Some sites seem to know not only what you just bought, but what you bought or what you decided when you were on the same site a week ago or a year ago. How come? Do they keep a data file that records decisions made by every customer and then do a lookup when you return to the site? No. There are technical reasons why that would be unreliable as well as inefficient. In fact, the data file is on your computer, not theirs. When you make a decision or register a preference on one of these sites, a little record is added to a data file on your computer. It's known as a cookie. And when you come back a week or a year later, the server computer reads back the cookie and does something appropriate with it. Here's a site that knows where I live. So when I ask it what movies are playing, it preferentially lists my local movie theaters. Exactly the same thing could be used to record semi-permanently what language I prefer to have served up on a multilingual site. If you're interested, you can actually read the cookies that are on your system and find out who set them and what they contain. They're all in a file called cookies.txt. And here on my system is a cookie that says I like to read my data in the English language. I must say, when I first heard about cookies, I was amazed. This will never fly, I predicted. Nobody will allow a website to write to their hard disk as the price of entry. How wrong I was. That's just like saying nobody's going to go to a nightclub if they insist on stamping indelible ink on your wrist to prove you've paid. That practice may have been shocking at first, but we don't give it a second thought now. Well, I promised you some hard figures on what people are making off the net, and here they are, courtesy of Alan Sloan. As Newsweek's Wall Street editor, Sloan has one essential skill that I lack. He can read a company's annual report and cut through the nonsense to the bottom line. Now, one of the greatest instant success stories on the internet is Yahoo. That's the indexer started by two graduate students from Stanford who are both now millionaires. Yahoo is the very first name that comes to my mind when I'm asked the question, who's making money on the web? Well, Alan Sloan points out that Yahoo's profits have some of the features of a pyramid scheme. Yes, indeed, they made around $100,000 in fourth quarter 96, but that was solely due to the interest they made by investing all that money eager stockbrokers threw at them. Absent that $1.5 million in investment income, Yahoo would have made a loss of $1.4 million. In other words, their actual operations weren't profitable or anywhere near it. Another straw man that Sloan knocks over is Amazon Books. Everybody assumes that Amazon is going gangbusters simply because of their huge volume. Their business is entirely web-based. Not so. It turns out that Amazon lost $6 million last year, and it's now depleting its resources at the rate of $2 million every 3 months. I could give you other examples from personal knowledge, but they'd be very small potatoes compared with those two whoppers. Sloan concludes his article with, try not to get hooked on hype and try not to confuse a good website with a good investment. Good advice. Well, finally, on the subject of web commerce, supermarket shopping. Yes, it's coming, but cautiously. The major American supermarkets have all got together in one big website called supermarkets.com, and it offers you information about special offers and coupons in your area. But over in Britain, where I come from, and where home delivery of groceries is more of a habit, the Tesco supermarket chain has gone one better. Their website actually allows you to order groceries and have them delivered the same day. So there's some solid evidence that cultural factors influence the way that commerce is conducted on the net. And although Alan Sloan's data is absolutely fascinating, I don't think anyone doubts the long-term potential of the web as a marketplace. In fact, a study done very recently by a think tank called International Data predicted that by the year 2000, the annual value of web trade will reach $95 billion. Yet another business takeover, this time of the virtual cash company Verifone by Hewlett-Packard, proves that the big players are really convinced there's a bonanza coming. The technology involved in Verifone leaps over the credit card slot and promises instead a chip that we'll all have on a circuit board in our computers. It'll keep tally on our virtual bank balance. It'll have to be refreshed from our real bank balance once in a while, obviously. But from the point of view of the technology, anybody who's ever used a telephone card with an embedded credit chip will understand the concept immediately. So there's one prediction for the future of the net, and a pretty safe one to be sure. It's been fairly amusing for those of us who were active on the net in the pre-web days, watching the gradual awakening of interest on the part of the industrial giants. I think that awakening is now about complete, but along with it, unfortunately, has come the awakening of another giant, the United States Congress. My first ever TV appearance discussing the Internet was for a program produced in 1994 by WGBH in Boston. And they asked me to illustrate on video what my worst fear was for the future. Actually, they gave me a choice. They could have best hope or worst fear. I picked the worst fear, and this is what I came up with.
All right, put your hand down. Stand up straight. Hold the card up to your chin. Okay, say your piece and make it quick.
All right, my worst fear about the future of the net is that the cyber cops will arrest us all in the middle of the night and smash up our computers.
Why would we do that?
Just because we know too much. So that was my vision 3 years ago. Well, silly me, I might have guessed it would be sex rather than politics that would get the attention of the wise heads in Washington and arouse their indignation. Just months after my dire prediction, Senator James Exon of Nebraska introduced the Communications Decency Act that would severely punish any Internet service provider who made indecent material available to its subscribers. So it seems the midnight jackboot will not be at my door, but at that of my provider. I joined the protest against this attempt to regulate the net for two main reasons. First, it seems to me there's already quite adequate legislation to prosecute peddlers of the really vile pornography within the United States, and I just cannot approve of U.S. laws attempting to control the moral standards of other nations. Secondly, punishing a service provider because a client downloaded a smutty picture is, to me, as absurd as punishing the phone company because two of its customers are engaged in phone sex. I've had discussions with several ISPs about this, and they all say they have no idea how they would go about ensuring that 100% of their throughput met Senator Exon's standards. One said it'll put him out of business. Mastering this new medium of communication has enriched my life in so many ways. And to me, a large part of its charm is its nature as an international, haphazard, often bizarre collection of the thoughts of ordinary people, not pre-packaged for me by the giant corporations that control our mass media, not censored by people with the moral convictions of Queen Victoria. Personally, I'm perfectly content to take responsibility for censoring the content of my computer on behalf of myself and my own children. Everybody can find something to disapprove of on the net, even me. Everybody can find far, far more that's interesting and valuable. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Let us continue with the second question and answer session. In this session, we have a call from Panama, from the Centro Regional de la Chorrera. Welcome. Your question, please.
Good morning. Greetings to you from the Gran Chorrera. My question is, what could the impact be in the future of the Internet from the global perspective, and what are the new facilities, what are the new developments as far as user-friendliness can we expect in the future?
All right, the crystal ball kinds of question.
Well, since I put myself in charge of looking into the future, I suppose I had to have a go at that. All of the trends that we've seen since the beginning of the graphical World Wide Web are going to continue. Namely, we're going to have faster connections capable of carrying more multimedia, and we're going to have more people connected using the web for a greater variety of purposes. As I think I indicated in my presentation, not all of those purposes are going to be purposes which all of us would approve of. That's in the nature of things. If the intent of the question is partly political, then I'd like to go back to a remark I made earlier that the Internet, as it becomes the emerging democracy of the globe, is a threat to certain nations who regard themselves as doctrinaire and closed to the outside world. I'm quite glad it's a threat.
We have a question now from Tula Tepeji, the Universidad Tecnológica de Tula Tepeji in Hidalgo. Welcome. Your question, please.
Bueno. Adelante la pregunta. Good morning.
Buenos días.
Buenos días.
Amongst the different software varieties available in the market, what would be the best ones to design and to better operate databases with the new web technologies?
Okay.
There's one I would like to recommend. In a sense, I'm a good person to ask this question because my company is very much involved on a day-to-day basis in transforming database information into web pages. But in another sense, I'm not, because we use our own in-house applications to do that. But there is one that I'm aware of, which I'd like to recommend, and that is Corel Web. That's made by the same company that does the very well-known graphical tool, Corel Draw. Corel Web allows for the transport of existing databases in many different formats into web pages, and it's a very effective tool. Hal, do you know of any others?
No, I would suggest simply looking into the suite of products that the Netscape Corporation is continuing to develop, not just for client browsers, but also a great many tools for use with your servers as well.
We have a question from Puebla, from the Comisión Federal de Electricidad, División Centro Oriente in Puebla. Welcome, your question, please.
La pregunta nos llega de Puebla, México, la Comisión Federal de Electricidad. Adelante. To what extent do we have in cyberspace web TV with interactive access on TV? What is the future of web TV?
Well, I think I'll try that one. At the moment, the key question is that question of interactivity. I was pretty impressed with the web TV demonstration that I saw when it first came out. To me, the good part of it is that it's going to further democratize the World Wide Web, because it's going to take the World Wide Web into households who would not feel capable of supporting a computer or feel able to afford one. It therefore makes it accessible to more people. But actually there is a technical problem in that there is a reduced opportunity for information to flow in the reverse direction. Let me just explain a bit what I mean. There are many pages on the World Wide Web, if you're seeing the web through a computer with a keyboard, whereby you can enter information yourself and make the information flow from you, the user, back to the web designer. That ability is very much curtailed in the web TV technology as it exists right now.
We have a question from Peru, from Universidad Nacional de Ingeniería in Lima.
Perú, a la ciudad de
Welcome.
Limac,
Your question, please.
Universidad Nacional de Ingeniería. My question has to do with marketing. How can I do in order to attract new clients who don't know my clients in the United States and the rest of the world through the internet. Is there a way, is there a more proactive way to expect people to connect to my web rather than sitting there waiting for someone to connect or visit, or like waiting for the phone to ring? What other strategies do you have?
The web is a morass of pages, and if you wait for someone to find you, it could be a very, very long wait. You must be as aggressive in marketing your website so that you can develop those impressions as you would marketing your product in any other medium. So what can you do? I would suggest immediately registering your site in as many places that it makes sense to do so. You may, for instance, go to InfoSeek and let them know who you are, where you are, what you do, and then they in turn can add you to their database so that if I do a search on a keyword and it happens to match your product or product lines, then I am much more likely to find you. Similarly, I would look to alliances with other individuals and exploit linkages to other sites as much as I could. Again, that's a vast question with lots of additional answers, but that's it in a nutshell.
Can I just add a point here, a useful, I think, point? There is a site called Submit-It, that's SUBMIT-IT, www.submitit.com, which enables you to submit the details of your site to, I think, currently about 20 different web searchers, so that you don't have to do that 20 times. It flows automatically into those databases.
We have a call now from Brazil in Portuguese, Serviço Nacional de Aprendizagem Comercial in Porto Alegre, Brazil.
Servicio Nacional de Aprendizaje Comercial. Adelante, Brasil. Vamos a ver. Buenas tardes para todos los colegas de este sistema de videoconferencias. Nuestra pregunta va dirigida al Dr. Harris. What will happen with technologies? What kind of technologies would enable us to advance, to progress? Do we have to continue receiving technologies via satellite, do you think? What is our future here? The interpreter is not sure. I was interpreting into Spanish and that got me disconnected, sort of. Can we ask them to repeat the question,
Could you please repeat the
¿Podría
question?
repetir la pregunta? Por favor, ¿podría repetir la pregunta? ¿Aló? Brasil.
Hello?
Brasil. ¿Aló? Well, the question is, what is the future of how does this relate to our future in our video conference environment? What can we expect?
Well, actually, you've directed the question specifically to me, but I think I'm going to duck it and hand it over to Hal Lenox because he's the one who knows about the video conference environment. That's really not my field, although I understand television pretty well. And I also understand how to marry television to the internet, insofar as one can do that at the moment. But in terms of the future of that technology, all yours, Hal.
Thank you. Well, again, there's a very long answer, and in the interest of time, I'll give you the short one. We will continue, of course, to rely to some degree on satellite, as that makes sense. There are other, as you might imagine, competing technologies, however, which are in the process of being deployed. And specifically in your country, a technology called MMDS, which stands for Multi-Megabit Distribution System. It is, if you will, the wireless equivalent of cable. And again, if you'd like to direct some additional questions on that to the ITC, I would be very happy to respond to you. But there are choices, there are alternatives, the technologies are there.
And we have a question now from the Universidad Tecnológica de Tulancingo, Hidalgo. Welcome. Your question, please.
Su pregunta, buenos días. Greetings to you from Tulancingo. You have said that Internet is important for the development of businesses, but how do you actually control legally all these operations? Because this is not only for business, but also as an information system that sometimes goes against moral and legal laws and mores.
That's a very tricky one. I think it's going to have to be up to each individual country to enforce its own laws on that. I don't see myself any hope of introducing international legislation that controls the use of the internet in a way that's accepted by all countries and by even a majority of its users. So my recommendation would be to abandon any hope of enforcing any overall international control and instead concentrate on the domestic problems of such things as breach of copyright, corruption of minor children, and business infringements. I think that's the only approach that's going to be any good for the foreseeable future.
We have a question from the Centro de Desarrollo Empresarial Industrial in Celaya, Guanajuato.
Industrial Development
Welcome.
Center,
Your
Celaya,
question, please.
Guanajuato.
Ok. ¿Puedo empezar?
Yes, adelante la pregunta. Siga nomás. Yes. La pregunta, por favor.
Bueno,
Adelante, la pregunta. Bienvenido.
Your question, please.
Hello?
sí, bueno.
Sí, diga, puede hacer la pregunta. Haga la pregunta, por favor.
Se llama Esteban Valera de Querétaro, del Centro de Desarrollo
I'm calling
Industrial.
you from Querétaro, and we have two questions. One,
Según estoy enterado,
from what I see, Sun Microsystems is developing a system called virtual.
a base de Java,
In other words, it's based on Java,
que solo
and
paquetes de la
and they
red,
want to have something based on
esta información se guarda
packets, and they want to keep that on a disk, save it on disk, and then go back to the used packet. And so they're trying to have a virtual PC with a virtual microprocessor. What kind of impact will this have on the businesses that are developing software and hardware? And because they are already big, so what's going to happen with them? And another question is why, because an economy based on information, this is a double-edged razor, right? Blade. So what is going to happen?
Let me take a shot at that. That is the question of the hour in Silicon Valley. As you might imagine, Sun is in fact developing the network computer, which will use servers as the primary residence of most data, and the network computer then would be a less expensive device for you to access that information. As you might imagine, Intel, Microsoft, and some other developers of hardware-based solutions are not particularly satisfied with that as an answer. The market will ultimately determine who's going to come out in front on this, but there's a great deal of work being done in that area.
We have a question from the Universidad Autónoma de Tamaulipas in Ciudad Victoria. Welcome. Your question, please.
Pregunta, Ciudad Victoria, adelante.
Sí, buenos días. La pregunta es la siguiente. Nosotros al accesar el web,
When we access the web,
observar que la información que recibimos
the information we receive is, of course, overwhelming, and it's immediate, it's instant. Those of us who do it through the phone, it is impossible for us to believe that the internet service providers charge here in our country for the connecting time, and that they have rates depending on connecting times rather than for what is being transmitted. What do you think? Because this is what is going on.
Well, I've got a very strong recommendation for you right away. Do away with the pictures. In all of the technology of access of the web, it is always possible to get into a mode where you do not see the pictures. Get rid of them. If time is your problem, do without the pictures. The information should be all in the text. If not, the page is not well designed.
Thank you for your excellent questions. We have run out of time. Especially thank you, Mr. Lenox and Mr. Harris. We hope that you have enjoyed participating in this video conference. We will continue transmitting programs on the latest in management systems techniques and global competitiveness. We invite you to participate on June 12th in the next program of our series entitled Commercial Diplomacy and Negotiation, Crucial Resources for Modern Organizations. For additional information on the International Training Center's programs for this year, please consult your participants' manuals, where you will find the dates and specific topics for these. Also, if you are interested in participating in training programs which will be offered by the International Training Center, please contact the Center by letter, phone, or fax. On behalf of all of us who collaborate with the International Training Center, I thank you for your participation and interest in today's program. Thank you, and see you soon.